Before I dig into things, a warning. This video will have vague major spoilers for the game's Final Fantasy VII Remake and Eternal Sonata, as well as the TV show Roseanne. I also talk explicitly about major spoilers for the original Final Fantasy VII and Silent Hill Shattered Memories. If you enjoy what I have to say, or it makes you think at all, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. Every little bit helps. Now, let's get started. With Final Fantasy VII Rebirth coming out, there's been a lot of chatter about the first time we saw Cloud and the gang, as well as about the first part of the remake trilogy. Since before the first remake game was released, communities from Reset Era to Reddit and more have been trying to figure out spoiler policies for the game. What do we consider a spoiler from a game that's more than 2 decades old? Not just any game either, but one that's so beloved and influential. Then you throw in the wrench of the remake trilogy seeming to be part remake and or part sequel, and eesh. Do we require spoiler tags for major plot elements from the original because people are coming into Final Fantasy VII fresh with the remakes? Should it be open season on story beats because the remakes are changing things? Does the fact that the game was released 27 years ago mean nothing is a spoiler in the first place? It's gotten heated. So, when the New York Times recently posted a piece titled "The Shocking Death That Has Devastated Gamers for Decades," complete with a picture of that moment, it wasn't just people being angry about spoilers either. It was also people being angry about people being angry about spoilers. Now, I'm not here to litigate whether or not Aerith's death is a spoiler, or if there should be a statute of limitations on something being a spoiler. Both sides of the discussion have good points, you know? It's hard to talk about how a culture-shifting piece of media did that culture shifting without spoilers, and Final Fantasy VII absolutely was a landmark game, though games do have a bigger barrier to entry than classic movies. At the same time, some people have a weird gleefulness about spoiling things, and there are so many reasons people may have missed out on the game. Maybe they were a teenager with strict parents. Maybe they couldn't afford the game when the PS1 was still current. Maybe they were born too late. I mean, there are teenagers nowadays who were born in, 2008? I get that it's easy to do whataboutisms, but at the same time, I do feel like people online have a habit of forgetting that everyone has different circumstances. I know I do sometimes. Besides, there's so much more to media than just the basic plot beats. From a creator perspective, there's a ton more that goes into the creative process. You have to look at your story from a million different perspectives, be willing to change things and take things out, really get to the core of what you're creating to make it the best it can be. There's a reason they say you have to kill your darlings, after all. From an audience perspective, there's so much more to appreciate about a game, movie, or book than just the basic plot. Characterization and dialogue, cinematography, music, acting, and the way the entire work is put together all play a part in how we enjoy media. Sometimes, knowing a major plot beat actually makes something better. Silent Hill Shattered Memories is by no means a perfect game, but it's actually really good at this. If you're not familiar with it, Silent Hill Shattered Memories took the very basic premise of the original Silent Hill game and ran in an entirely different direction. You still play as Harry Mason, who gets into a car accident on his way to Silent Hill with his daughter Cheryl. You still wake up from the accident to find Cheryl missing and have to venture through Silent Hill to find her, searching a school, a hospital, and an amusement park. The rest, though, is completely different. And as you get to the end of the game, Harry arrives at Silent Hill's lighthouse, battered and exhausted, and we find out that the therapy sessions we'd participated in throughout the game are actually from 25-year-old Cheryl's perspective, that the horrors we faced as Harry were a reflection of Cheryl's denial and her journey to, hopefully, acceptance. On its face, Harry was dead all along reads like a cheap twist, and trust me, I tend to hate "it was all a dream and he was dead" kind of endings. In so many cases, they negate character arcs and make the journey we go through as an audience ring hollow. Silent Hill isn't immune to it either, not with the original game's bad ending. In the case of Silent Hill Shattered Memories, though, they recontextualize the entire game. For example, as you explore Silent Hill, you'll find areas that make your phone generate static. And once you find the source of that static, you'll often receive a voicemail or a text message called an echo. Without knowing the game's twist, these echoes seem like they're just meant to be creepy. Someone might send you a photo of a party gone wrong, or you'll get a voicemail of someone choking to death. Knowing that twist, though, you realize that the echoes are all about Cheryl and what she went through in the aftermath of Harry's death. The party that went wrong was one where Cheryl almost got killed. The choking voicemail was a student she knew during school. The monsters that interrupt Harry every time he gets closer to finding Cheryl are Cheryl herself trying to avoid accepting that her father is gone. You need to know that you're playing as Cheryl and her delusion to be able to put together what the echoes are. Even if you figure it out as you play the game, that plot beat is crucial to understanding the narrative beyond Harry running around Silent Hill. Now, I recognize that's a very specific example. Not every game or movie is going to build the entire story around a spoiler, or even really foreshadow what happens. But that doesn't mean that it can't make the whole thing better. Take Aerith, for example. Knowing that she dies can intensify the tragedy of it happening. Every time she talks about the future, all the time she spends getting to know the party, down to the times that she's in danger and manages to escape, it's all made more tragic knowing what actually happens to her. Would we love Aerith so much if she hadn't died? Or is that part of why she's stuck in our hearts for so long? Does knowing that Aerith dies make Final Fantasy VII worse, or does it allow us to engage with our media in more diverse ways? More importantly, does it matter? After all, Final Fantasy VII came out in 1997. It became such a big part of the gaming zeitgeist that it helped popularize RPGs here in the West. It continues to poll as one of the top games on PlayStation and, well, ever. Considering that existing fans had been clamoring so hard for a remake that we got a multi-part series of them, I have a hard time believing that spoilers can ruin a good story altogether. Especially when one of the biggest debates is if the remake series will commit to killing Aerith at all. Okay, to be clear, major plot twists can absolutely have an impact, and I don't blame people for wanting to avoid spoilers in general. I accidentally spoiled myself on the killer's identity in Persona 4 while I was midway through, and as much as I do love that game, it's one of my favorite games ever, having to piece it together myself and experience the reveal would have hit hard. I think, in general, we should be more courteous to each other. In the case of Final Fantasy VII Remake, it stands to reason that not everyone knows that Aerith dies, considering turn-based combat is a hard sell for some people, and the game is old to the point that plenty of gamers may have missed it if they weren't into RPGs at the time. I mean, it's old enough to drink and rent a car. If you go into a conversation about Final Fantasy VII that isn't a spoilerific chat, that is, one labeled for spoilers or explicitly about the overall narrative or a specific major plot beat, it's not the worst idea to at least use spoiler tags or something. The remake series is bringing in new fans and giving people a way to experience a game they may have missed. And if you know that someone doesn't want to know anything about a game, don't spoil things for them even if you think it's just a too strong a version. On a related note, one of the common arguments that I see about spoilers is that when people want to avoid them, it prevents us from talking about media as art, which then contributes to the idea of media as something to simply be consumed rather than engaged with. Like this comment that I showed earlier, though, to be clear, this was not the only time I've seen this type of argument. There's a nugget of truth in there, in that I see a lot of people refuse to engage with media and actively shit on others when they try to. But I don't think that hoping to avoid spoilers contributes to that. That's a topic for another video, but I feel like it wouldn't have been a bad idea for the New York Times to post the exact same article with a picture of Cloud, or the original game's cover art, or something equally emblematic of Final Fantasy VII instead of Aerith, just to circumvent all of this. The problem is, you can't please everyone. What I've learned during my time on the internet is that someone will always consider something to be a spoiler. But with that, there's a measure of personal responsibility too. You do have to recognize that some media makes its way into our cultural consciousness, including major plot twists. I wouldn't go so far as to say you should have gotten to 30-year-old movies or 27-year-old games that are cultural touchstones if you really wanted to experience them. There are a million reasons why you might not have. But also, we're talking about something that's been referenced in a Disney movie right next to a classic meme. And when we're talking about a newer release, if you want to avoid even the potential for spoilers, then avoid marketing materials as best you can. Avoid trailers. Don't go into public discussions after a trailer is released and then get mad that people are talking about it without spoiler tags. Though, to be fair, I don't think that happens often. Now, that's different from smaller, more personal discussions. If you have a Discord server of your own, or if you're part of one set up for a friend group, if you're talking among friends or have a group text set up, it's completely fair to ask people to spoiler tag. I mean, hell, it's a great use for Discord's channel and thread functions. I guess what I'm getting at is, it's not as simple as caring about spoilers or not, whether it's a seminal movie or the newest game release. Personally, I tend to err on the side of considering official marketing materials to not be spoilers, even when it seems like they reveal way too much. Part of marketing is teasing audiences to get them intrigued, and that includes misdirection. A contextless shot from the tail end of a game doesn't give you much information. In a vacuum, you don't know if it's actually the end of the game, if it's a dream sequence, if it's a flashback or a character purposefully lying. That was actually part of the first marketing campaign for Star Wars The Force Awakens. The only character we ever see wield a lightsaber in the trailers was Finn. But in actuality, Luke's lightsaber specifically calls out to Rey, and Finn only ever uses it because he picks it up from the ground towards the end of the movie. I mean, one shot used in most of the trailers was even one from right after Rey fights off Kylo Ren at the end. That's what makes context so important. Not just because we don't know what happens in trailers, but because individual plot beats, or hell, knowing something's entire story, doesn't negate the whole experience. When I was a kid, I used to read the Final Fantasy VII strategy guide front to back at school. Knowing that Aerith died, knowing that Tifa nearly gets executed, knowing about the Tifa and Scarlet slap fight, or rescuing Cloud and Mideel, didn't change that actually going through the game felt different. Playing through a game or watching a movie beginning to end is a fundamentally different experience from reading a Wikipedia page or seeing clips out of order. From the music to the way the narrative pieces itself together, media has more to offer than spoilers. If it didn't, why would we find ourselves rewatching movies, binging shows over and over, replaying games from our childhoods? I do wish that there was a way to take spoilers out of our brains. I'd love the chance to piece together the murder mystery in Persona 4. I'd love to feel the gut punch of Aerith dying without knowing it's coming. I was only 19 when Silent Hill Shattered Memories came out. I wonder what adult me would think of Cheryl and Harry's journey without knowing what happens. But none of that makes me appreciate those games any less. Thanks for watching, or listening. Either way. If this video made you think at all, I'd love it if you'd like it and subscribe to my channel. Comments are always great too. Has a spoiler ever ruined something for you completely? Has one ever made something better? Talk about it below. With spoiler tags, if you wouldn't mind. And until next time, take care.